Are you thinking of buying, selling, or just finding that special place to rent? Sometimes it's easier said than done. Radio Diferente presents Los Cabos Home and Life, hosted by Dana Leuenberger, accompanied by experts in the real estate field. And so we begin.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Los Cabos Home and Life. I'm your host, Dana Leuenberger, and today we have a very, very special guest, Mr. Michael Schaible. Hi Michael, how are you?
Hi Dana, thanks for having me.
Michael is the broker-owner of Baja Properties and the president of the MLS. So today's topic is going to be the full hour. We won't have any commercials or anything, just a little bit of breaks because it's a very extensive subject.
Good, I look forward to it.
Perfect. Well, Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself because you have a very interesting story. On Friday that we met, you were telling me how you came to Cabo, and so I think a lot of people would be very interested in hearing that.
Sure, I'll share that with you. I arrived in Los Cabos in 1986, actually. And I was living in Vail, Colorado, and I was running a large timeshare resort in Vail. And after having lived in the mountains for 7 years, I thought it was time to maybe move to the beach. So I took a look at California and Texas and Florida. And so one day my boss told me, I have a ticket to a place named San Jose del Cabo in Baja California Sur, and I want you to fly down there for the week and see if you like the place, and if so, I'll invest there and make another timeshare for you. And so I took advantage of that, and I flew down one day on a Friday afternoon and met a gentleman here. These are back in the years when there was really no airport. Mm-hmm. There was just a landing strip and a small palapa out on the edge of the landing field, and he took me to what then was one of the only hotels in San Jose, the El Presidente. And I instantly fell in love with the place. In fact, I canceled all the week's meetings and I flew back home to Colorado and arrived back at the office Monday and wrote my resignation and thanked him for the trip. And 4 days later, I moved back here to San Jose del Cabo.
That was a big decision. So that it was such a big impact that you said, and you had that you could see the future that Cabo has.
I might have been a little earlier on that, Dana, because you're right. It was a little early. It was starting to develop. Fonatur at the time was building the very first golf course in our state, the 9-hole golf course in San Jose. And I remember it was still a dirt road around the golf course and Finisterre Boulevard, and there was no homes to live in back then. In fact, I had to stay on the sofa of the friend who met me the week before for 3 months while we waited for the first house to be finished there on the golf course so we could move in. But I had a feeling that the investment that Fonatur was willing to make and the exposure of Los Cabos was going to be something that interested me and excited me. So Los Cabos was just a teenager back then, and we've certainly grown up a lot since.
And you've seen it, all the transactions, the transformation from Cabo.
I have, and it's been amazing to see that, and there's a few of us who can really say that, to see what has happened from the sleepy fishing village we were. It was an old country road between San Jose and Cabo. It took nearly an hour to get from one town to the other. There wasn't a light bulb between the two towns. It's just amazing, the transformation. Yes.
Buying groceries was a challenge too because you had to go from one place to another. Not everybody had everything, right?
That is true. Lots of things were challenges. In fact, we didn't even have telephone service back then. And it was kind of funny because if you wanted to make a phone call, you had to go down to what was a common phone booth with about 4 or 5 little stalls, and I would give the gal the number to call Chicago to a client, and she'd tell me, well, come back at 3 o'clock. And you'd come back and hope get a connection and there'd be 3 or 4 other people on your line speaking Spanish. It was a disaster. There was no individual lines back in 1986. So it was quite challenging to do business as opposed to today.
And I mean, some people that came here back in the 80s, they didn't stay. They went back, and not everybody, right, stayed here and saw all the potential that Cabo has.
That is true. It was not easy back then. So when people show up nowadays and complain, it just doesn't work with us old timers. Things were a challenge, but that was part of the beauty of it also.
And you came with your family, so for your wife must have been also a little bit challenging to first different country, different language, and used to all the accommodations in here.
Yes, it was difficult, but it was so beautiful. It's a beautiful resort now, but it had an aura and a beauty back then. We couldn't make any money. Nobody in town was making any money. A lot of things were bartering and working with each other in the community to get by. We all had big hopes and big dreams, and slowly but surely we started to make progress and look at what we have today.
Well, you're one of the pillars that has made this industry what it is right now, so this is why I really wanted to invite you for an interview, and thank you so much for accepting to come, because this will be very good information for all the brokers, all the agents, and also because there's a lot of new agents that in my opinion, it's important for them to know what was the beginning of real estate in Cabo, who was the people that made it happen. Because like when we were talking last Friday, for me the MLS was an amazing tool when I first started working here in Cabo. And I knew Cabo, how do you say this, I got familiarized with Cabo through the MLS.
Right.
And with different agents, because I would do my homework after work and go, okay, now I'm going to check this area or San Jose, so that was really good.
Well, thank you for having me, and I look forward to speaking about the MLS.
Perfect. And so, like we were talking, Cabo is and this is your quote, Cabo is one of the most important destinations on the globe right now.
Yes, I believe so. When I think we are one of the most important destinations in the nation, of course, and I expand that to all of North America. And now we're starting to see a global trend. When I first started here, I can remember when I would go home and visit with people, I would tell them, well, I'm from Cabo San Lucas. And they'd say, where? And I said, well, Baja. What? Well, down in Mexico. You mean New Mexico? No, you mean Old Mexico. So it was almost a learning process for everyone to figure out where was Cabo San Lucas. And now, of course, Cabo is a global name. It's a destination that is recognized not only throughout all of North America and South America, but it's now becoming, I think, a global brand. And as you may know, we will be having our first direct non-stop flights from London starting in just another month or so.
I heard about it, yes. I saw it on the internet.
And we're starting to see customers from all over, and I think that the next phase of growth is not only going to be for Los Cabos, but for the entire state, actually, of Baja California Sur. And I think as we progress, we're going to become an international market. I really do.
That's correct. Like a few years ago, we were at Maui, and people will ask us, like, where are you guys from? Mexico, Cabo. And they would know where it was, perfect, like that. And the question that we were very surprised, people would say, like, what are you doing here? You have great fishing, great golf. I mean, Maui's beautiful, but I've been there, done that. I'll stay here anytime.
Yes, and a lot of my owners today were loyal to visiting the Hawaiian Islands and converted once they had visited here in Los Cabos. Our connectivity to the United States and Canada, our incredible climate here, the beauty of our hosts, the Mexican people, the culture, the cuisine, the fishing, the golfing. Why would you go anywhere else?
Correct. Yeah, and it's so close, right? It's like from Calgary, it's a 4-hour flight, and now the direct flights that we will be getting.
Yeah.
So, Michael, how was business back in the day here in Cabo? Because there was not the smartphones or the internet. How did you carry on?
We spoke a little bit last Friday about that, and I remember when we first started in business, we were really creating an industry. We opened the very first brokerage in San Jose del Cabo, Baja Properties. And in those days, there was no contracts and no escrow and no concept of real estate sales, really. So in the early years, I remember I used to just write out an offer on a yellow pad and get the two parties to sign it and transfer funds in my personal checking accounts up in Colorado. It was just crazy. But little by little, we have formulated it into now a very sophisticated industry with an emphasis always on the protection of our buyers, of our investors.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. And when does the MLS start, and how does it work?
Well, the MLS is a concept. The actual full name of MLS is the Multiple Listing Service. And the concept of an MLS here in Los Cabos started around 1990 when there was very few brokers. There might have been 3 or 4 of us at the time that had real estate companies. And there was no such thing as anybody having an exclusive listing. We all kind of knew who would sell and what they might sell for, so it was dysfunctional. And we decided one day to meet over coffee and form for the first time ever an organization, the MLS Los Cabos. And the concept being that we should share with each other the information about which properties are for sale. And then if we could work together and share the commissions, it might be better for the sellers and certainly easier for our purchasers. So in the very beginning, we would just take Xerox copies of 10 or 12 properties that we collectively had back in the day. And once a month, we would make a Xerox books times the number of people coming to the breakfast, and that was the beginning of the MLS.
Oh, that's a great story. Yeah. Just share it between each other.
We made it happen. We did what we needed to do then, yes.
And you made a good business, too.
Yes, yeah.
And now on the MLS, we are a lot of realtors, right?
Yes, well, the transformation now over some 25 years of doing this, and of course, with the smartphones, with the internet and all the social media, we now have formed an online system that we subscribe to. And this online system in the MLS now has 3,000 listings in it. And our organization has grown from those original 3 or 4 sitting around the table. And we are now 500 members across the entire state of Baja California Sur. And collectively, we're responsible for nearly $1 billion in real estate transactions annually.
That's a lot of money. That raises a lot of eyebrows, right? In other entities, like, well, in the United States, in Canada, and through Mexico. Mm-hmm.
It does, and you know what's so good about it is it allows our potential prospects the opportunity to take a look at what's available in our market from the comfort of their home before they arrive in Los Cabos. So often we receive requests by guests that are coming down, and we often have appointments arranged before they're even here to spend a little bit of time during their vacation to go around with one of us and to look at specific properties that they were able to review at home in the comfort of their home on their spare time. And that's really transformative in our industry for sure.
No, it's a great tool. I think it's like if you would have a Ferrari, you just need to how to drive it, right? Because we had back in November, the training for the MLS was 2 days, and that was really good because now you can also do the portals for your clients, and then they can go and interact. So I've sent it to some of my clients, and the response has been really good.
And it is good that we have those trainings. We subscribed through a company in the United States, FBS, and the name of the system is the Flex MLS online system. And fortunately, we hold those trainings periodically throughout the year, and one of their executives will come down and meet with us. It's always a full house, and they teach us every year newer and newer tools to help us do a better job in presenting our sellers' properties and in helping our purchasers make their investments here in Los Cabos. We would be lost without that.
But in my opinion, it's a win-win situation for the agents, for the brokers, and for the buyers or sellers, because you have so much information there. But also one thing we're going to talk about is the structure. Because for me, being a part of the MLS, I feel that I have a backup. I feel that I have support. And when I'm meeting with some other with client or with some other agent, you actually know that you're regularized by the MLS. Mm-hmm. So that really creates a good ethical working environment. Yes. And it's a lot healthier because we're dealing with a lot of money and a lot of things. So we want to do the best thing for our buyers, for our sellers, for everybody, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned the structure, and let me speak to that for just a moment. The MLS, our MLS is actually called the MLS BCS for Baja California Sur. And it's an amazing structure. It's actually a company. And we are formed by 88 different real estate brokerages. So each one of the real estate companies that have joined us become a stockholder in our company, MLS BCS. And this is a very interesting group. So you can imagine 88 brokers and developers. There's a lot of big egos in the group. There's there's a lot of talented people in there and a lot of busy people, and we're all competitors. But we decided to form this business all together. Nobody has any advantage over anybody. Mm-hmm. And to set aside any competitive differences or any squabbles and get together, we formed one single company. There's 88 owners of it, and each one of our brokerages is responsible for having every one of their agents become a member. And that's how we achieve the 500 number of members. But we're actually 88 stockholders or brokerages. And each year we get together and we elect a board of directors. We have a 5-member board of directors that manages the company and manages the online system, as well as handles any disputes between the stockholders or the brokers. So it's been a very effective structure for us. Yes.
Excellent. So it's now it's all statewide, mm-hmm. but it started just with Los Cabos.
Yes.
And when did La Paz and
well, in 2014, we converted ourselves from a civil association, and we turned ourselves into a corporation. We are actually an SA de Seve. That opened the door for us to invite the entire state in. So we now have stockholders and members from Los Barriles, from La Paz, from Loreto, Mulegé, and all points around the state. And the northern part of the state is starting to get attention. I think that's going to be part of our future. The things that are happening around Loreto are very exciting.
Yes, and they should, because like if I get a buyer asking me for a property in La Paz or in Los Barriles, like I am not an expert on that area, so I don't think that I would do the best job. But then you go into the MLS and you see who has this listing, who has sold, because all the information is there. It's so knowledgeable. So then you go like, I'm going to get in contact with this person and I'm going to do the best thing for my client. And then you just partner up and you get a referral and you have a happy client, right?
We all benefit. The purchasers benefit. The sellers benefit. It's really been amazing transformation. We are so advanced in what we do here in Los Cabos. We are really a model for the nation of Mexico. I receive calls all year round from various states and others that are trying to get together and form an MLS as efficient as we operate here in Los Cabos. So we have really set the path as to the proper way to conduct a business in real estate transactions.
I totally agree and very thankful for that. Okay, we are going to take a little break and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the rules. Vamos a ir a un corte comercial and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
And we're back to Los Cabos Home and Life on Radio Diferente.
Discover the latest trends that Puerto Paraíso Entertainment Mall has for you and your family. Pamper yourself with the best brands in footwear, jewelry, clothing, swimwear, makeup, and perfumery. Enjoy the beautiful view of the marina while you dine at one of our many restaurant options and live the big premieres and discover the magic of cinema. Follow us on Facebook and find out about our events, promotions, and gifts. Plaza Puerto Paraíso, in the heart of Cabo San Lucas. Every day, all year round, Plaza Puerto Paraíso makes me happy.
Los Cabos Home and Life, only on RadioDifferente.com.
Alrighty. Okay, we are back. We're just going to say a quick hello. Josefina Alvarez, she's watching. Melanie Lynn, hi. Alexia Guillen, Charles Rodriguez, Estela Rivera, and Isa Calva. She's in Mexico City. Thank you for watching. If you guys have any questions, please join in. Alrighty, so we're going to talk about rules. That is very important.
Yes. Well, it is very important. We are not a regulated business. At least we have not been until very recently, or in the process of licensing our industry. So effectively, Dana, we had to self-govern over the past couple of decades. And in order to do so, the brokers would get together and we drafted a set of operating policies and procedures. And what initially started out to be about 8 or 10 rules has now turned into about a 20-page document.
Okay.
And it grew every time one of us made a mistake and found out what we did wrong and shared it with the group and decided, well, let's not do that again. In would come a new rule, and we would vote in favor of these rules. And essentially what happens is all 500 of us commit every year to abide by these rules and to conduct ourselves in a manner appropriate that is governed by those operating policies and procedures.
No, yeah. Because like if anything happens, you can go back to the bylaws and just check everything. I had a transaction and my clients were asking to do the seller was asking to do the closing with someone else. Mm-hmm. And somebody just emailed me the the rule, I think it was number 14 or something. And you go like, yeah, you show it to your clients and say, this is why. Yes. And we apply, right, to the rules.
That's true. And idea of the rules is not only to help us work with each other as competitors and to work through a transaction, but again, as I mentioned earlier, the importance of the rules in our organization is the safety of the two parties, the seller and the purchaser, because often they do not know how to conduct business properly in the purchase and sale of real properties here, and they depend very much on us. And if we're not conducting ourselves properly, then that places the transaction at risk, and it also places our reputation at risk. So as we developed the rules, we did so in a manner that we wanted to build confidence in the industry. We wanted investors to be able to come and know that if they do business with anyone from this group, things are going to be done correctly, on time, according to law, and with all the protections that we have in those rules.
And for them to feel protected, that is very important, because it can be very overwhelming that you want to purchase a property in a beautiful place, paradise place like Cabo. But the thing is that it's a different country, and there is a lot of comments like people, why are you going there? What is this? And we had also a lot of people that we call coyotes.
Yes.
That did not do anything right. I had a lady that told me, I purchased a property, they gave me a deed, and I gave them the money. And I go like, no, you should never do that. And that was a long time ago. Like, if you wouldn't do that in your country, why would you come here and do it? So it's very important that people look for a realtor that is a member of the MLS, correct?
That is true. You know, some of our rules, I'll hit on a few with you here. We have requirements such as from the seller. So really, the problems can begin right there at that moment when first starting with a seller. So before we allow any property to come onto our system and to be offered by ourselves to the marketplace, we have to make sure that the property is in perfect order to be sold. And so we have a very stringent list of requirements that each of us must obtain from our sellers before we're allowed to enter into a listing agreement or before we can enter the property onto the computer system. And so some of those requirements include having a copy, of course, of their title, which can either be a Mexican fee simple deed, an escritura, or in the case of a foreigner selling, that would be a fideicomiso, or they would be beneficiaries of a Mexican bank trust deed. So first order of business, we find out, do you really own it according to the public registry? So we need a deed. And then once we have the deed, we find out all kinds of things. Who's really the seller? And if the seller's a company, we need all the copies of the company.
If it has no lien, too.
We have to get a certificate of no lien to make sure there are no encumbrances. We request evidence of the payment of their annual property taxes, current. And we also request evidence of receipt of any homeowner association dues, which is now required by the public notary when finalizing a transaction. So we make sure that we review those documents in advance. We also ask the seller to enter into an exclusive agreement. So the seller has to pick one of us, not several of us.
And that protects both agents, both brokerage.
Yes.
And the commission, right?
Exactly. So the commission is established in the agreement, and through our rules and regulations, we share the commission whenever we have two companies involved in a sale, which more and more often is the norm. So I might be representing a seller, and you most likely will bring the buyer, and the two of us are going to work together and share in the commission. It's great for the seller. They get a lot more exposure across 500 agents.
Correct.
Instead of just a few agents that any one of us may have.
And that's correct. And the importance to have a full file. And even sometimes we meet sellers that they're going through a rough time, and that's why they need to sell, to help them get everything organized. So because we never know if the next day we put it on the MLS and it has happened, you might get an offer.
Yes.
So then you would have to back everybody up and get all those documents. And well, it's not fair for the buyer for that has put their time being down here to purchase a property.
That's true. So that is one of the reasons why we want to get everything in order in advance of promoting the property. We also have a rule that we will not promote non-listed properties.
Like they call it pocket listings, right?
That in our industry is called a pocket listing. So we don't want to work with non-listed properties in our system because I might bring a purchaser over and find out that you didn't do your homework and they're not really the owner of the property, or there are liens or and all kinds of problems. So we do encourage sellers to interview several brokerages and choose who they'd like to work with. But make a commitment to one of us is in effect making a commitment to all of us.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's easier also for the seller because you talk to one person and that person talks to the rest. And just being on the MLS, like I check the MLS in the mornings with my cup of coffee, and you see what is the new listings, and then you see the pending, and that's really exciting because you go like, oh, I need to go out there and promote my listings harder or whatever.
Right. So it's a very good tool for the seller. They get a lot of exposure. The company that has the listing is going to be responsible for showing the property and for viewings of the property. The owner often is not here. In many cases, the owner is a foreigner and is not here at the time. So they have a representative here that on a moment's notice can present their property to someone who's most likely vacationing.
Correct.
And has a very short window to determine whether they want to invest here. So it's a wonderful tool for our sellers.
Yes, and also because Cabo is very different than how you do business in the mainland of Mexico or even in the States, because people are here on vacations. We have what is the high season and the low season, although right now summer has been pretty busy, like the past 2 years, and we have had very good sales. But you have to work how the tourism is coming and going. You might show a property this December and they might not come to the next fall, and that's when they purchase.
Right.
So that's where you need the contract and
Absolutely. Well, some of the other rules that we have also that are very important is the fact that we do not permit anybody to touch that money.
That is an excellent thing for buyers. So buyers, pay attention to this segment of the interview because this is really important information.
It is important. We require amongst our members that all transactions must use third-party escrow companies. Now, this is a concept that is not usually used here in Mexico. In the old days, if you will, the deposit, maybe someone would make an earnest money deposit of $5,000 or $10,000, and we're scheduling to close in a month or two with the balance. And here in Mexico, we do not have escrow accounts. We do not have the concept of escrow. So what was happening is each real estate broker was handling these funds. And before we know it, every brokerage has a bunch of money that does not belong to them. And that places risk all around, and we had a couple of bad apples and bad players.
That's correct.
Bad experiences. And we put our foot down on that and demanded that we need to change this, and we need to use bonded, insured escrow services. More often than not, they are U.S. accounts, I think almost exclusively, with U.S. escrow companies. And the purchaser is secure in knowing that his deposits are being held in a third-party escrow and that nobody gets to touch those funds until there is a legal deed transferred before the public notary and a transfer of possession, and then and only then can funds be released from escrow.
Absolutely. That's how it works.
Yes, and that was a real game changer for us. And we coupled that at the same time with another concept that might sound funny, but we demand that we use the real value of the property.
Well, that's what we should, of course.
So going back to the old days, and something that is still practiced in probably most of Mexico, is that we would conduct business at a false value, a value that wasn't really the transactional value. We would use an avalue or a Mexican appraised value. And more often than not, the foreigner has no idea that this is happening. The foreigner is at home, and somebody in Mexico is making them a deed, which would be a fideicomiso. And without really knowing or understanding, the seller would let the notary know, well, use this value of $10,000 on a $100,000 transaction. Big benefit to the seller.
Correct, because less tax.
Less capital gain tax or none. But the problem, Dana, is on the next sale. When that buyer turns into a seller and the next person agrees to buy for $150,000, all of a sudden they discover that they have a very low value, not the true value they paid on their deed, and in effect, their seller's capital gain was transferred to them. And that was devastating for us. We did that all through the 90s. And we put our foot down in Los Cabos, and we said, that's it, no more. We are using real transactions and real prices. So every time the notary requests from us, are you using the appraised value or are you using a declared value? And that's when we bring forth the declared value. And we've changed completely the mindset here in Baja California Sur to behave that way. Well, this is good for everyone, including the government, because there's a 2% purchase tax.
Yep, Isabi.
The Isabi, and that comes to us here at the municipality. So much better we're getting 2% on $100,000 than 2% on $10,000.
That's correct.
First of all, it's also legal. It's responsible to declare a real value if you have a real value greater than the appraised value. So we had to kind of break some of these taboo customs and start doing things the right way.
Correct.
And now that we've been doing that for 10, 15 years, pretty much all properties have converted over to the real values. And again, I go back to the confidence building in the marketplace, or we wouldn't be selling $1 billion a year.
That's right. And sometimes, well, some of the properties that are for sale here are up in the millions of dollars. And the buyers are very sophisticated buyers too. We
Yes.
encounter businessmen and people that this is like, could be their second, third, or fourth home, right?
Correct. And not only that, Dana, but we kind of grew up on our side. We have wonderful law firms here,
Yes.
wonderful attorneys here. And we have an industry that was kind of created out of all of this, what we call the closing agencies.
I love my closing agents.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah, like Alicia and Romina. I work with them so happily.
Wonderful. In the former practice, each of us brokers had to create the deed for the buyer and seller to celebrate. So we were burdened with holding their money and playing escrow. We were then
no.
burdened with trying to make their deed.
No, and that's a big responsibility because I remember back in the day also, people would receive cash like for a deposit and put it in their safes. Well, what happens if you get robbed or something?
Be sure of it.
Exactly. And also I believe that everybody should have specialized in their area.
Yes.
If you're a good selling agent, do that. If you're a good buyer's agent, do that. But also, like also in the mainland, what they do is that the real estate agent does the closings.
Yes.
So like you're not an expert, like I'm not an expert, right? You're going to go to
Correct.
the notario and for this and do that. And sometimes a property might just kind of like have like little red flags coming
Yep.
up. So somebody that has been in business and doing the closings, they have a big toolbox of things that go like, okay, we can solve this in this matter and that
Yes.
matter and to the benefit of the buyer. So everything is a smooth transaction.
Absolutely. And so out of that came the closing industry. And you mentioned the settlement company
Yeah.
with Linda Neal and Alicia. And we have Romina, we have P&H, we have attorneys themselves offering these closing services. So not only is it getting done better and faster and more efficient, but it frees us up to do what we do best, which is marketing and selling properties.
Exactly.
So that's been a big progress. And of course, we demand that those closing companies also abide by our wishes that all transactions will be conducted under real declared values.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like now with Romina, when we put a property for sale, we already calculate the capital gains.
Yes.
So the seller knows exactly, like we do estimate of how much would it close.
Correct.
And everything the numbers can go up or mostly down, but they know exactly what they're into and make a decision instead of a surprise, like I have to pay how much?
That is another benefit of having third-party closing agencies, and they also prepare for the escrow company. They prepare a disbursement instruction. So about a week before closing, both parties will receive and both parties must sign a very detailed disbursement instruction. And that defines exactly where every dollar is going. It defines who's receiving the commissions, how much the capital gain tax is for the seller. It is not given to the seller. It is retained here and delivered to the public notary. It describes any outstanding property taxes or homeowner dues or prorations of any utilities. And at the end of it is the net disbursement to the seller. And all of that is now off of our plate and is being conducted in a much better manner through the industry of closing agencies.
Yeah, that's correct. Now I'm convincing national buyers to go through escrow. And there's some escrow that if you hire, like I did once with Alicia, and they didn't charge, the fee.
Yes.
So that was good in special occasions, right?
It's a little, again, escrow is not a concept that we're used to here in Mexico. So when we're working with Mexican sellers, there's sometimes initial resistance to it. There's a belief that the public notary is supposed to handle all of the funds.
And they don't.
The public notary doesn't want any of those funds. And not long ago, we have a new law in Mexico, which is the anti-money laundering law.
Correct.
And so the last nobody wants to touch that money. The notaries don't want to do it. It is really best handled through escrow and defined by the closing agency and the attorneys involved. It's a much better method.
Correct.
Yes.
We are just going to go to a break. Vamos a un corte, and we'll talk about also money, the new laws and the money laundering. Okay, so we'll be right back.
And we're back to Los Cabos Home and Life on Radio Diferente.
Discover the latest trends that Puerto Paraíso Entertainment Mall has for you and your family. Pamper yourself with the best brands in footwear, jewelry, clothing, swimwear, makeup, and perfumery. Enjoy the beautiful view of the marina while you dine at one of our many restaurant options and live the big premieres and discover the magic of cinema. Follow us on Facebook and find out about our events, promotions, and gifts. Plaza Puerto Paraíso, in the heart of Cabo San Lucas. Every day, all year round, Plaza Puerto Paraíso makes me happy.
Los Cabos Home and Life, only on RadioDifferente.com.
Alrighty, we're back. We're gonna just say hello to Rosario Vasquez Rivera. She's watching from Tijuana. Michael Hopkins, Steve Jasco, and Katia Cao from Coldwell Banker. Hi, Katia. Alrighty, so we were talking before the break also, like our industry is a vulnerable industry.
Yes.
And now with the laws, with the money laundering?
We have to be very careful. There is the anti-money laundering law in Mexico, and within that law, there are certain industries that are identified as vulnerable industries. We are one of them in real estate. Mm-hmm. Some of the other industries are such like automobile sales, jewelry sales, any industry that has lots of cash flow or lots of cash movement. So we are part of that. We are one of the vulnerable industries. And as a result, each one of us company owners are legally responsible to disclose exactly what's going on in this transaction. And by doing that, we have a form that we refer to as the KYC.
Correct.
And this form is called Know Your Client. And it is required in every transaction. It must be signed by both parties, purchaser and seller. Mm-hmm. And the KYC form is essentially a disclosure that we, the owners of the company, must file every month with the government that these are the transactions that my company was involved with. This is who the seller was, the purchaser, the amount of the transaction, the bank account where the money came from the purchaser, the account where the money went to the seller. Mm-hmm. It has to disclose proof of domicile of both parties, so we collect proofs of utility bills. So we must be very careful now to abide by the anti-money laundering laws, and all the more reason why none of us want to be holding all of those funds inside our own companies.
No, absolutely not.
Nor does the public notary care to do that.
Yeah, because everything has to be traceable.
Yes.
Where it came from, what bank account, like you were saying.
It is.
Yeah, so we have been filling those forms now, and actually it does help a lot. Yeah. Well, yeah, we have to be careful exactly now, and like you don't want to have any problems with Hacienda or with anybody.
No, and we're getting used to it, and we're getting better at it as an industry, and it's a legal requirement, and it's a good thing.
Perfect. So another question that we have is that we have a sheriff on the MLS, correct? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
We do. We have a sheriff. In order for, as I mentioned earlier, we're equal owners. We're 88 owners of the MLS that each own our own companies. And we don't want conflict with each other. And so we decided that we better hire a sheriff.
Okay.
So our sheriff is well advised in our rules. And our sheriff has our rules like his Bible. And he's watching every day how we are all behaving. And he watches on the internet, and he makes sure that the information that each of us are posting every day is correct and complete.
Okay.
If he finds something he doesn't like, I hope you haven't received any, Dana, but the sheriff will...
I did, like 2 weeks ago. It was fine.
The sheriff will send you a notice that he notices something that might be incorrect and gives you an opportunity to fix that. Sometimes we have very important conflicts or larger conflicts between brokerages.
Yes.
And when that happens, we have to go back to our rules and we get our sheriff involved. And so both parties, both brokers will provide to the sheriff their arguments, their case, the supporting documents.
You need all those supporting documents, too.
You have to. He demands all of that. And then he makes his opinion, if you will. And he presents it to us, the 5 members of the board of directors. And then it's up to us, board of directors, to try to resolve the conflict between our 2 co-brokers. And it actually works very, very well. Often it's resolved before we get to the point of the brokers needing to come before the board of directors. However, if need be, we have penalties and we have sanctions.
Okay.
And we have removal.
And that has happened, right?
And it has happened.
So what would be the penalties or the
They are varying. If you've just made a small error on putting your listing online, for example, we require a minimal of 6 photos. So
Correct.
if there's 4 photos on there, no big deal. Get 2 more in there. When we get a phone call and somebody has scounded on $2 million, we've got a problem.
Correct. You measure the size of the problem, right?
And the penalty is in proportion to the error that was made. So we have and we even define the levels of penalty, and we make very clear which ones will cause removal. And brokerages don't want to be outside this MLS system. It's very hard today to operate a brokerage without being a member of the MLS.
Agree. And if you're not in the MLS anymore, then it's a small town. Cabo, San Jose, it's a small town. You go like, why is there not anymore, right? So you don't want to be in that position.
You don't, and as a result, there's not that many conflicts.
Correct, because you have that backup. Like when you're doing business every day, and sometimes you might have or say something that would bother someone, right? So I try to talk it directly if it's something like you're showing a property and they're getting too chatty with your clients and trying to sell themselves like this is my name and like this.
That's a no-no.
That's a no-no. So what I do is that I send a text and I said, I think you're talking too much to my client. Let me carry on with the showing. And also I just first approach the agent. If something doesn't happen, then I know that I can approach the MLS. On a closing we had last summer, I was approached by an agent and they wanted not to record the
real value.
The real value. And she said, oh, this is like everyday kind of business. I said, no, señorita, no, it's not. Been doing this for 24 years and you're not going to. So I asked the lawyer and I got all the information. So I sent copy paste what he sent me because it's a federal law to try to pull a fast one on Hacienda.
Yes.
And then I said we're going to pull off from the deal, and then if not, I knew that I have the MLS that I could present all those documents and to protect myself. So after all that, The deal was done. It was recorded in the correct place. So,
Good to hear.
so for us, was really, really like good.
Good to hear. Usually dispute resolution can be resolved, as you say, agent to agent. After that, the next level up is broker with broker. And then next level up is involving us at the board of directors, and you don't want to do that. We try to avoid that. But honestly, the board of directors usually solves it also. And often it's resolved before it gets to our level. We've been doing this now for 25 years. Our brokers know the rules. We have really worked very well together. We're all competitors, and we're all entrepreneurs, and we're all going after the same thing. But when we sit down as one group under one roof, it's amazing the transformation, the excitement, the benefit to all of us to be part of this group.
Especially when it's so well structured.
Yes.
Another thing, the contracts. We have
Yes.
contracts that we can go and see. The listing contract is very good, is very clear. You are the creator of that contract, right?
Yeah, from my original yellow pad to what it is
See?
today, we have developed a standard offer to purchase, as well as a standard listing agreement. We share it with our membership. It's not a requirement, and each broker can alter it as they see fit. However, our rules do demand that each of those agreements have certain items in them in all cases. So if you make up your own contracts, it has to abide by our rules.
Perfect.
Yes.
And what if, this is just an idea, what about if we all had the same contract? Wouldn't that make it a lot easier when you're receiving an offer? Because, like, I've gone through my contracts when I received an offer to purchase, and I review it with my lawyer, and it goes like, this doesn't end. Okay.
Yes.
There's a lot of offers that their articles or clausulas, they don't apply.
That is true, and we've heard that from our membership, and we have a goal now coming up here in 2019 that we would like to make standard agreements. We would like to get our brokers to believe in them and agree to them, bilingual, and then we would all use them. It would be much easier because we know exactly what we're receiving. When we receive a different contract, we have to spend a lot of time being very careful about that language in there.
Correct.
So one of our goals coming up here in 2019 will be to standardize our offer and our listing agreements.
That's great.
Yes.
Yeah, and that gives you a lot of confidence when you have all the contract and you know everything, and that's what every realtor we should do. Okay, so we're coming close to the end of our program. So one more thing is that all this talk, and we have so much material that we can do like 3 more shows, and I hope that you come back.
Thank you, Dana.
About the new real estate law.
Yes, so that's exciting. In 2017, our state Congress voted and approved a new real estate law for Baja California Sur. And it is being implemented this year, 2019. And what that means is that any practitioner in our industry that is working directly with buyers and sellers for the transaction of real property will need to be licensed. They will need to meet certain educational requirements. They will need to be sponsored by one of our brokerages or be a broker themselves. And we are all going to have to be registered with the state of Baja California Sur and receive a identification and a registration. And if you are not in that registry, then you will be considered, as you mentioned earlier, a coyote, and you will not legally be allowed to conduct real estate transactions.
Because when we do a transaction, the notario will ask us for our number.
That is true. So we're excited about that. It's brand new for us. We have been waiting many, many years for this to take place. And through a lot of hard work and a lot of effort, we now have the law. We're just now receiving the rules and the regulations, how to conduct it. There is a committee that is formed at the state level, and it includes our participation also from the industry. We have seats on the committee as both the AMPI organization and the ASPI organization, both of which are Mexican civil associations, that have seats on the board along with 3 of our state governmental departments. And we really look forward to that because, once again, that kind of regulation combined with the efforts of our attorneys and closing officers, combined with third-party escrow, these are all really good things to have. We're setting ourselves apart in Baja California Sur, that this is a place that you can come here, fall in love with it, invest your money safely, enjoy your ownership here, and later when you're ready to sell, you're going to be treated in the same manner, legally, confidently, and protected in every aspect of the transaction.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
That gives a lot of confidence to people. So for the agents, because we have a big community of non-speaking Spanish agents, so what are they going to have to go through?
Well, first of all, our non-Spanish speaking agents, we need to open up a Spanish school and get them up to par. So I always encourage agents to learn the Spanish language. And we believe that they are not going to be set aside by that limitation. We're going to work with our foreigners, our foreign agents, to have them be able to be part of the registry. So they shouldn't panic. It's not going to be a national-only registry. It'll be open to anyone who is legally capable of meeting the educational requirements and the registry requirements.
And I'm sure that a lot of them will do it, and they will do great. And I went through the testing during the summer.
The Conocer course.
The Conocer, and I have my certificate and all that. So I went through that, and I mentioned I will volunteer to help any agents or national agents to get all their evidence file set up, because when you just read it, you go like, oh my God, this is a lot. But then when somebody has gone through that and they tell you, okay, this paper and this document makes it a lot easier. So I will be more than happy to help with that.
And our sister organization, AMPI Los Cabos, offers the SEP-approved Conocer class in English. So we'll be able to assist those from the foreign community who do not speak perfect Spanish.
Perfect. And also education is so good. This is one of the things that got me started with Los Cabos Home and Life, to bring more education and knowledge, because that is very good.
And you've done that, Dana, and we thank you for that.
Well, this is also for all the real estate community, and I haven't been inviting agents if they want to promote their listings or open houses. Like, there's a lot of really, really good agents, and I really feel proud of being part of Los Cabos MLS and the brokerage and all that.
Well, congratulations.
Okay, so we're coming to the final of our show. Any thoughts for our industry?
I think that in general, the future is very bright. It's very exciting what's taking place in our industry. We have amazing products here now available throughout the East Cape and on the Pacific now. We're seeing growth into new areas. We have this huge number of visitors that is expanding each year. Our entries into our airport is expanding by incredible percentages, 6, 7, 8% every year. This is a huge number. The hotel industry adding these additional rooms, quality developments, everything seems to be on the higher end. People love Cabo. They're coming in huge numbers, and that is just simply going to relate to more real estate sales for MLS members, and I'm excited for that.
Absolutely. Maybe we should do a show on the East Cape, because I have had a lot of people ask me about the East Cape.
It is taking off right now. It's a wonderful place to invest. It really is.
Perfect.
Yes.
Well, Michael Schaible, thank you so much for coming to the show and sharing all this information with us. I know that there was a lot of people from the MLS who are looking forward to seeing you in this interview. And thank you, everybody, for watching. We came live from Radio Diferente. Gracias, Jonas. As always, Jonas Castro in the controls. And I'm Dana Leuenberger, your host for Los Cabos Home and Life. See you next week. All right.
Lifestyle tips on recreational events and professional advice on buying, selling, and renting real estate in beautiful Los Cabos.